Well, thanks for checking out my new YouTube series on how to do digital ministry. I've been working on this series for a bit, and it's kind of a brainchild of something I've been writing, and I just kind of wanted to create a series out of it because I think video is probably the best method to communicate this. Kind of like if we're just getting coffee, and maybe you've stepped into an online pastor role, or maybe your church is just trying to think about digital. You don't have, staff to be able to hire somebody this. Maybe you're going to appoint a volunteer to be over this. And hopefully this type of format is something you can watch and learn. And I want to challenge you as you are watching this to leave comments down below on YouTube or wherever you're watching this at. I'm going to be reading those, engaging, and shaping future videos off of what feedback you're giving. I want this to be something that kind of gets better because as somebody who's been an online pastor, since 2010ish, the landscape has changed drastically, and it's something that is constantly evolving and changing. I just recently finished this book about kind of the history of the internet, and one of the points they made was this idea that change is constantly happening, even if you can't notice it, and it's really hard to predict the future. It's kind of like the erosion of mountains, or the creation of mountains. They're always being formed and reshaped. We may not always notice it, but it's happening, and it's really hard to predict what the next 10 years is going to be like, because if we look back on the 20 years ago and bet what the internet would become, we wouldn't even believe it, because there's so many innovations that are constantly happening. And so your church needs to figure out how to navigate this digital space. And what does it look like to be you, but also navigate and kind of leverage a lot of these tools. And so to kind of start this off, I wanted to just kind of lay the framework on, how do you think about this, and how do you navigate digital ministry, culturally? And the first thing I wanted to say is that digital ministry it isn't just online church. It isn't just streaming your services. It's much more than that. It's important to understand that digital, or the internet, is just a tool. It's not the strategy. Your strategy needs to be consistent, and you look at the building not as the strategy. You look at as a way to facilitate your strategy, and this is true with digital. Digital isn't a drag and drop. It's going to solve all your problems. It actually might introduce more problems because digital is so distracting. There's so many things you can focus on. There's infinite possibilities, and so just understand that digital is just a means to the end, and it's not the end in itself. It's not what you're actually trying to accomplish. I like to think of digital as a way to extend the square footage of your building, whatever you're trying to do. And now you get to interact with people on their own terms, on their own turf, wherever they're at. And it's a way for you to have a local presence, but also decentralize your strategy in members' homes, or reach people maybe further away than you ever thought your physical building. I had a good friend of mine that owned a Chick-fil-A, and he used to say this idea of that he only could make as much money based off of how much traffic the street got. And so he had, data reports from the county and so forth about how many cars drove by. And if he could capture that data, he could figure out potentially what his sales would be. And so, and he would think about, all sorts of tactics. One tactic was he wanted to increase sales, so he actually helped connect the road because there was a dead end. And so if he could connect this road to this other road, it would have more, traffic, which led to selling more chicken. Eventually, actually ended up moving locations because he had to go somewhere where there was a busier street. And I think of digital like that. It's a way to kind of extend everything to not just sell more chicken, but to reach more people and disciple them. So think of digital ministry as not a means to end, but it's a way to kind of accelerate, to amplify what you're already doing. And it's important to understand with that is that you don't have to be everywhere. Colossians 3:2 says, "Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things." Now, what that scripture is not saying is that the earth is inherently evil. We know that because we live here. Jesus lived here. He was able to coexist and be present without compromising himself. Flesh is not naturally evil. Yes, bad things happen with it, but it also means that we got to be focused. We got to think about, okay, God, what are you doing with me here? And specifically, your church is being called into something. You are called to reach a certain type of people, do certain things. This is not a copy and paste strategy. It's how do you be you with the tools that are presently before you. Now, the scary thing about this is that we know 1 Peter 5:8 says very famously that be alert and sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around you like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And I bring that up because technology is often an opportunity for the devil to distract you and actually compromise you in some big ways. Um, what's interesting, if you look back on the history of technology, everything from the inventing of the printing press to the telegram to radio, TV, and even the internet, both the church has leveraged it in huge ways to extend its reach, but it's also led to some very terrible things at the same time. I think most famously, they talk about how, like, unfortunately, porn has always been on the front end of accelerating the technology. One of the examples they bring up is the VHS player. One of the reasons why the VHS player exploded was because people didn't want to go to a public store, but they would watch it in their home, and so that helped the sales of VHSs and VCRs. And yes, I was around for VCRs. You had to record things at a certain time. And so both it can be a great thing and tremendous opportunity to reach people, but also can be used in very terrible ways. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Kind of like fire. Fire can, burn your hands, or it can, cook you a meal. It's in the hands of the person who's actually wielding it. And so you have to wield this wisely, and you have to be aware. You have to be aware of some of the downfalls, people in your community, what they're struggling in, what you can and can't do, and why, because what you're enabling. Yes, it's easier than ever to reach people. I call it the back row Christians got expanded because of digital, because a lot of people attend your church and they just sit in the back row, but they actually never actually commit. And now people can just watch your stream and they can think they're part of your church. And so we got to think more creatively. We got to be stronger. We got to figure out, what are we doing with this, and how are we stewarding this moment? And so we got to think very wisely about this. And so the key here is about being focused on your vision, on your strategy. Proverbs 4:25 says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you." I love this because obviously Proverbs is a book of practical wisdom, things we should do. And what it's saying is just like march straight ahead. And so the key here is that you know what God wants you to do. You understand your vision in your community, and you pick the platforms and the places that you need to invest on. And so, for example, just because a new platform like TikTok kind of rises up from the ashes doesn't mean you need to be on there. But I would say you need to be aware of what's going on there to figure out, can I leverage it? And so if you're reaching a community, mainly in the 60s and 70s and 50s, maybe Facebook's the platform. If it's a little younger, maybe you need to be aware of Instagram and Snapchat. And if you're wanting to train people, maybe Clubhouse is a platform you need to be aware of. The key here is about you being you and figuring out what platforms and areas you need to invest on. There's all sorts of platforms you're probably unaware of, like WeChat and Telegram, and you kind of go down the road. I was recently doing a conference for a bunch of pastors in Russia, and I talked about Zoom as a meeting platform. Well, they told me some platform in Russia that's very popular. I've never heard of it, because technology, yes, is decentralized, but there's also a lot of regional flavor to technology. And so just be aware of what you need to do, and then you pick the strategy that makes sense. And so in digital is one of those things, in your belt that you can kind of pull out and just you're ready to use. But you have to have clarity on what you're trying to do, and then you can go and pick and choose, what platforms, places, and things you need to invest in. And think much bigger than just a stream on Facebook and YouTube. Think of your video strategy, your social media strategy, your CRM, how you manage your data, to an LMS, how you do courses and different things. Think bigger than just pushing out something. A big shift in digital is listening to people, and you can have conversations with these people, which is a hard shift. As pastors, we're taught to talk to the room and people listen for 30 minutes to an hour, where, the shift from broadcast to YouTube is people sit and they engage. You see this on YouTube, how they call people to leave comments, and they're going to pin stuff, and they're going to engage, and they see it as a living piece of content. And so we're going to, throughout this series, talk about a bunch of different things, and everything from picking a strategy to actually looking through some of the philosophical, theological things you need to think about, to online groups, to discipling people with different types of events, to house churches and different things, all the way, everything I can think of, I'm gonna put out into this YouTube series. So I want to challenge you to subscribe to this channel, and if you got somebody that's wants to be an online pastor or thinking about going into a digital ministry, please tell them about this. And then also comment below in the comments what you think I need to be talking about, because I would love to, at the end, kind of as an addendum, add on some special topics to kind of make this as helpful as possible. And really, my big hope here is I want to build up your muscle with digital. I want to stretch it. Muscle needs to be teared down before it can be built up again. And this means you trying different things, checking out new platforms. A platform that's popped up in the last couple weeks is NBA Top Shot. It's this whole NFT thing with cryptocurrency. It's really weird and different. But, as somebody who saw it, I went and just explored it, because as an online pastor, I want to be aware of what's going on. And so I found out, wow, like you get in this digital line, and then as you're sitting in the line, they're streaming it on Twitch, which Twitch is I could do a whole thing on Twitch. Twitch is such an interesting platform, but I want to be aware of it. And I want you to be somebody that doesn't see these new platforms and runs away, but goes and invests. And it doesn't mean that you need to launch something on there tomorrow, but I want you to feel comfortable enough to kind of go and listen, do a lot of listening, so you can determine, okay, do I need to have like a flagship presence here? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But subscribe to this channel, follow along. Please drop in the comments any feedback or any things you think I need to be talking about it. And I'm gonna be drinking some coffee on the way. I like cold coffee. I don't know what you drink, but let's drink some coffee together over the next couple weeks as I'm launching these videos. Thank you so much for watching and engaging.